one person raised their hand and said, Prabhupada, would you sign this book, your Bhagavatam? Oh, yeah, Prabhupada, yes, sure. Came up and he signed it. Then another person raised their hand. Oh, Prabhupada, would you sign mine too? Okay. And suddenly a third person signed. Then when the fourth person raised his hand and asked if he could have Prabhupada said, and now I will have to charge. Now I will have to charge. When the astronauts went to the moon, we of course all know that Prabhupada was watching the TV, and he had a servant, Purushottam. But he kind of kept a running track on what was going on. He wanted, and at that time I had come to L.A. I guess I was in Berkeley maybe, but I'd come to L.A. and Prabhupada one day he asked me to write a letter to the editor of the New York Times about this moon landing, and he gave maybe 10 points. He said, these are the points that you should put in the letter, and they should answer these points. And I don't remember them all, and I don't have the letter anymore. It's possible that it might be in the archives, but some of the points were that, first of all, why did the scientists internationally not recognize the moon landing? Because scientists are generally above national boundaries. They're on a higher echelon. The other point was that the moon is 200 degrees below zero, so how could anything man-made function there? And the other one was the moon is made of shiny substance, possibly ice, and therefore how could there be shadows? In this way he gave a number of points. Of course the letter was never published and there was no reply to it, but Prabhupada was very tuned into that. In Paris, Prabhupada went to Paris, and Bhagavan was in Paris, Shamsundar, Satrup, myself. No, Satrup I don't think was there, but at any rate, one morning Bhagavan and Shamsundar they didn't come for Mangal Arti. They weren't present. So when they finally appeared, sometime later in the day during a darshan, Prabhupada said, where have you been? They explained, oh, we were out talking to some influential people to help us make programs for your preaching. Prabhupada said, oh, who are those influential people? So Bhagavan began to explain there was this lady, she was the owner of a nightclub. And Prabhupada said, owner of a nightclub, so what did the nightclub owner suggest? Oh, they recommended another person. Oh, so the big man recommended another person. Then Prabhupada began to tell the story of the lion and the crane. He said, the lion got a bone stuck in his throat. So he approached the crane that, please remove the bone from my throat. You can stick your beak in there and pick it out. The crane said, no. If I put my head in your mouth, you will eat me. The lion said, no, I promise, I will not eat you. Not only that, I will give you a benediction if you do this. So the crane reluctantly stuck his head in the lion's mouth, removed the bone. Then the crane was standing in front of the lion, anticipating. The lion looked at him. Why are you standing there? What do you want? So he said, you said that if I stuck my head in your mouth and removed the bone, that you would give me a benediction. The lion said, what? I allowed you to stick your head in my mouth and now you want a benediction? So Prabhupada's point was that the big men, they think if they just allow you to see them, that they have done you a great favor. So the moral is, he said, do your own work, don't depend on others. So, one day Prabhupada asked me, he said, why did I write all these books? I said, so that we can learn the philosophy. He said, no. He said, these books are there just to convince you to chant Hare Krishna. If you are convinced, there's no need to read these books. When Karandar left, then it created a vacancy on the BBT trustee. At that time, Prabhupada was the trustee, Bali Mardan, and Karandar. There was just three. And he was in London at the time. I think it was 73 or 74, I don't remember. But one day, in the morning, he called me in. He was still sitting on his bed. He said, I want to appoint you as a BBT trustee. And I could understand right away that this was a very confidential service, more confidential than any other service, because it had to do with the publication and distribution of his books, which was actually separate completely from the institution, ISKCON, illegal. It was a legal separate thing, and that Prabhupada was personally part of that trust. So I was really astonished that he would ask me. I said, "But Prabhupada, you have so many disciples. They have MA, BA. Some of them are PhD. They're educated. I haven't even finished high school." And in fact, a few days earlier, he when I was bringing him the letters, he said, "Why is it that every letter you write, it has 2 or 3 spelling mistakes?" So I said, "Well, Prabhupada, I just didn't go to school properly. I just couldn't." Oh, he immediately, you could see I was embarrassed. So he said, oh, yes. He said, "You see," he picked up a little Oxford dictionary. He said, "I always carried this dictionary, little Oxford dictionary, so you should get one. And when there's a word you don't know, you look it up." He said, "That's how I learned English." And to this day, every time I have one, everywhere I go, and whenever I see one, then I immediately think of Prabhupada. Of course, that was the effect Prabhupada had on us, that everything that he processed or referred to in the course of his preaching, either formally or casually, became a springboard for Krishna consciousness. I remember one day he pointed out dog stool. He said, "Highly infectious. This is your civilization." So now every time you see a dog or you see the dog stool, you think of Prabhupada. Now, Prabhupada's engaging the stool to inspire us to be Krishna conscious. Once he's passing by in the park, a man's doing the jumping jacks. Prabhupada stopped, he looked at him. He said, "This exercise is for the body." He lifted his hand with the bead bag. He said, "This exercise is for the soul." So when you see a man jumping jack, you think of Prabhupada. This is the effect he had on me, and I imagine that same effect for other people. Anything that was referred to by Prabhupada in the course of his preaching became permanently impressed on your heart, just like on the video, whatever is impressed there, whatever is taking place in front of the lens is impressed on the tape. So anyway, getting back to the story, so I asked, "But Prabhupada, you have so many disciples, PhD, they're all and I remembered that a few days ago where he asked me, why you can't spell right. And he stopped and he said, "Because you, without being asked, have published and distributed my books. You have understood the importance of my books." Then he said, "The devotees may fail, the temples may fail, but my books will live forever." So books, of course, we all know that. But Prabhupada also said it, and in that time when he said the temples may fail, we couldn't imagine, well, the devotees may fail, the temples may fail. How could they fail? There's just this colossal, dynamic, energetic environment where people were coming and money was flowing, books were being printed. It was unimaginable. But Prabhupada could have already had a glimpse of that. So books were very, very important to Prabhupada. The original Bhagavad Gita, of course, was printed by Macmillan. But the book didn't really sell. Actually, the rights were given to Macmillan, the rights for the book. In other words, the copyrights were actually given to Macmillan. But the clause was that if they failed to keep it in print, the rights would revert back to the BBT. Good thing. At that time, I was in Germany, and we were in the process of translating the Bhagavad Gita into German. And I knew that we actually couldn't print it legally. But I was, at the same time, I was convinced that Macmillan would not print that book again. So we just went ahead and powered through and had it translated and sent it to the printer, even while the rights still belonged to Macmillan. And we made a few minor changes. We made the book a little smaller, and we printed the book on Bible paper. So when the book came out and I brought it to Prabhupada, he looked at it and he said, "It's better than the American edition," because it had the Bible paper. So I felt the beauty of being with Prabhupada was that he allowed you to innovate. He gave you the room or the confidence that you could do things without consulting him like a schoolboy has to consult his father.